Basic elements of a business process diagram, BPD. In this part of the course, we are going to learn what the basic elements of the BPMN notation are in order to model a business process. BPMN defines a business process diagram, BPD, based on the flowchart technique. A business process diagram is a diagram designed to graphically represent the sequence of all the activities that occur during a process, to be used by process analysts who design, control, and manage processes. BPMN is designed to cover different types of process modeling and allows the creation of an end-to-end business process. In this way, a business process diagram may contain various processes. BPMN proposes three basic types of process sub-models. 1. Private, internal business process. Represents a unique business process where normally the full sequence of the process is shown. Represents orchestration. 2. Abstract, public business process. An abstract business process represents an external business process, i.e., a process where the detailed flow of the activities is unknown. 3. Collaboration, global business process. Represents the interaction between two or more business entities. These interactions are defined for a sequence of activities that represent the messages interchanged between the entities involved. We are going to see some examples of the three basic business models previously described. In this example, we can see an internal or private business process, where we can observe the details of the process, showing each of the process activities step by step. This diagram shows the interaction between an internal or private business process and an abstract or external process, where only those points of contact of the abstract process with the private process are represented. In this case, the abstract process will be represented by the pool called supplier, where the details of the process activities cannot be seen. This means internal orchestration is unknown. In this diagram, we can see an example of a collaboration process, where the interaction is shown between an internal and an external business process. However, the difference from the previous example is that in this case, some of the activities within the external process are diagrammed. If we focus on the supplier, we will see some of the activities that occur within the external process. Also, they represent those points of contact between the participants by means of messages. These, as opposed to the previous model, are connected directly to the flow objects and not to the boundary of the pool. Now we are going to discover the basic elements for process diagramming. BPMN provides three basic figures. Activities. An activity is a step within the process representing a work performed within an organization and uses resources such as time and costs. Activities are represented by rounded rectangles. Then we have gateways. Gateways are elements used to control the divergence and convergence points of the flow, such as decisions, actions in parallel, and synchronization points of the flow. Gateways are represented by a rhombus, and the notation within the figure indicates the type of behavior of the gateway. Events. An event represents something that occurs or may occur during the course of a process. Events affect the flow of the process and usually have a cause or result. An event can start a process, interrupt a process or an activity, stop the process, or finalize it. There are three types of events based on how they affect the flow. Start events indicates where a particular process will start. Intermediate events occur during the course of a process. End events indicate where a process finishes. In this process of internal suggestions, we can see the figures previously described. We have a start event of the process, followed by activities of the process, the gateway, that in this case represents an exclusive decision where the flow can take one of two possible routes, and then the end event, that in this case indicates that the process was finished satisfactorily. We also have sequence flows. Sequence flows represent the control of the flow and the sequence of activities. This represents orchestration, indicating that activity B can only start when activity A ends. When B starts, A is done. It is used to represent the sequence of the flow objects, where we find activities, gateways, and events. Now we are going to see the pools. A pool is a container of a single process. Therefore, an internal or private business process is contained in a pool. The name of the pool can be considered as the name of the process. As mentioned previously, a business process diagram may contain various business processes. In other words, a business process diagram can contain various pools. If a business process diagram only has one pool, this cannot be diagrammed, but implies that it has a pool. As previously seen, to represent the sequence of the flow objects of a process, a sequence flow is used. BPMN states that sequence flows cannot cross the limits of a pool. Therefore, to represent the interaction between different processes or entities, message flows are used. An abstract or external process can be diagrammed as an empty pool, black box, with points of contact on the boundary of the pool. As we have seen, message flows represent choreography, the communication that exists between processes or pools. They represent the possible messages that can be interchanged between processes, such as requirements, responses, events that can modify the process, etc. Message flows represent signals or messages, not flow controls. Therefore, not all message flows are fulfilled for each instance of the process, nor is there a specific order for the messages. We can have message flows connected directly to activities, representing message flows between two internal processes or between an internal and another external process, as shown in the diagram. We can also have message flows connected directly to a pool boundary, representing message flows between an internal process and an abstract process or black box, shown as follows. However, you cannot have message flows within the same pool. Additionally, BPMN establishes some figures in order to provide complementary information about the process. These are classified within the category of artifacts. There are 3 standardized artifacts, but modelers or modeling tools are free to add as many artifacts as required. Data objects that provide information about the entrance and exit of an activity. Annotations that enable information about the process to be added. And groups, that is, a visual mechanism that allows the grouping of activities for the purpose of documentation or analysis. Within artifacts, we find data objects that enable us to show information that an activity requires, such as entrances or exits. In this example, we can see the data objects that can be associated directly to the activities or to the flow sequences, using another type of flow object called association. In this diagram, we can observe the annotations that enable the modeler to add relevant information to the process to help to understand it. The annotations are associated to the activities using the connecting object association. In this other diagram, we can see a group that encloses the preliminary activities of the credit study. Remember that groups enable the enclosure of a collection of elements for the purpose of documentation or analysis. Groups do not affect the sequence flow of the activities. Good. Now we are going to summarize what we have seen so far. BPMN defines a business process diagram based on the technique of a flowchart. This business process diagram provides a collection of elements classified into 4 basic categories that facilitate the diagramming and understanding of a business process. Within the four categories, we find the flow objects that are the main elements that are used for diagramming a process. Within the flow objects, we find the activities that represent a work performed within an organization. Events represent something that occurs or may occur during the course of a process. Within events, we have seen that there are three types depending how the process flow is affected: start events, intermediate events, and end events. Finally, within the flow objects, we find gateways that are the elements used to control divergence and convergence points of the flow. Within the second category, we find the connecting objects. Within the connecting objects, we see sequence flows that are used to represent the sequence of the flow objects, i.e. activities, events, and gateways. We can also see the message flows that are used to represent the interaction between different pools, and the associations that are used to associate data objects and notations. Later, we will have swim lanes, where we find the pools and lanes. A pool is the sole container of a process, and a lane is a subdivision of a pool. Normally, they represent a role or an organizational area. And finally, we have artifacts, which are used to provide more information about a process. Within this category, we find the data object, notations, and groups. Now, we are going to see how to diagram a process with BPD Process Modeler. We will now see the BPD Process Modeler. This modeler supports 100% of the BPMN standard version 1.1, and it is completely free. You can download it from the BPD webpage, www.bpd.com. In the modeler, we can create several diagrams. Each diagram is a page. To name this diagram, double-click on the default name, Diagram 1, and change it. Remember that each diagram needs a pool, as we have previously seen in the course, and for that reason, the BPD Process Modeler creates a pool by default for each diagram. You can use this default pool, Process 1, but you can delete it. To name the pool, double-click on the default name of the pool and type the name. In the left part, you can find the palette in which you can see every figure of BPMN standard. To use any of these figures, you simply drag and drop the figure. We are going to build a process to illustrate how to use the BPD modeler. First, we will include the lanes. Drag and drop the lanes and name them. Now we will include a start event. We drag and drop it in the diagram. Every figure has a pie menu for easily diagramming the flow sequence. To use this pie menu, drag the figure from the pie menu and drop it. Now, this new figure has been created with the sequence flow. We will include a gateway. Drag and drop a gateway from the pie menu. We continue completing this diagram. If two objects are not connected through a sequence flow, select an object from the pie menu and drag it to the other object. The two then become connected. We can align the figures horizontally and vertically, and move the sequence flows to improve our diagram. To move a sequence flow, click on it and select its point or end and move it where you want to locate it. Also, it is important to name the sequence flows. To do this, double-click on it and type its name. Additionally, we can find data objects and annotations in the pie menu which are used to provide additional information about the process. When we drag and drop the data objects or annotations, they will be associated with the corresponding figure. We can also modify their size. We have finished diagramming our process.